Hey now, hour number 3 of the line, Talk 99.5, Talk995.com. Andrew Mclain, who.com. And the Talk 99.5 app, which you need to make sure you download, baby. Make sure you download it and all the stuff and all the things. Make sure you get on it. So we're about to have a big moment. We're waiting on a White House press briefing. As I noted earlier, the IDF had launched attacks after the ceasefire was agreed to in Lebanon against terror groups. I guess the Houthis or whatever. So a ceasefire was reached. Israel then proceeds to fire off shots in Lebanon. And based on what the ceasefire says, I personally think as the ceasefire was agreed to and the Strait of Hormuz was agreed to be opened, that Israel should, unless it is purely defenses and you are being fired at, which there was some residual at the end of the ceasefire before everybody found out, that the firing should stop. Because, again, we noted how fragile the ceasefire agreement was. Because Israel fired into Lebanon, reports are that Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz once again. So here we are back to square one. And you can consider that being the IDF and the Israeli government breaking the ceasefire. Again, I don't know the details of it. I would assume that the ceasefire would include not firing into the region, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was an understanding of you just can't fire into Iran, but you can fire into Lebanon. I don't know, but it's the Iranian terror proxies that they're firing at. So apparently it pissed Iran off enough to where they have reclosed the Strait of Hormuz and are blocking ships from going through, which again goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's a matter of which side is going to break the ceasefire. But we'll hear about all of that here in a few moments from the White House press briefing. First, I got a tweet that I want you to play real quick, John Bird. And this goes back to Tucker's comments that you heard moments ago. This is actually the longer version, so you can have some context to it. And I'm just trying to get into the mind of these individuals as to why they're acting this way. Again, this all goes back to the Trump tweet about Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up into one. There'll be nothing like it. And also the end of a civilization, which what he was referring to was the Iranian regime or whatever. This is more of a this is more of Tucker's comments from his show. Listen. This is what Tucker said.
How dare you speak that way on Easter morning to the country? Who do you think you are? You're tweeting out the F word on Easter morning? Just watch. Praise be to Allah. This is a mockery not just of Islam, it's a mockery of Christianity. To send out a tweet with the F word on Easter morning promising the murder of civilians and then saying praise be to Allah without explaining any of it, you are mocking me and every other Christian because we're Christians. We can't support that. That is evil. It is vile on every level. It begins with a promise to use the U.S. military, our military, to destroy civilian infrastructure in another country, which is to say to commit a war crime, a moral crime against the people of the country, blow up their bridges that people cross every day to go to school and work and to worship, and yes, church, because there are over 1 million Christians in Iran. This is their Easter too. And power plants, civilian power plants in a country of almost 100 million people. Iran is a modern country. What happens when it loses power? Well, people die. Babies connected to incubators die. People in hospitals die. It's totally unacceptable. Not under the phony laws of some international body, but under moral law, God's law. killing non-combatants, people who did nothing wrong, who didn't choose this war. We're just people created by God. That is immoral. That will never be moral. That can never be justified. That is always wrong.
10 years. Again, 10 years is how long we've been watching Trump do his thing. And for those of us that have been paying attention, we know the negotiating tactics. We know the threats. We know what he does in order to get things done. And Tucker, Tucker does too. And so I don't know, but this idea that Trump was mocking Christianity with that is utterly bizarre, especially saying that if you mock Islam, that you are also mocking Christianity. How is that the case? As a matter of fact, I heard Steven Crowder. I don't watch his show very often, but I heard him talking about those comments from Tucker, and I kind of have the same sentiment that he does on the issue.
I don't know about you, but kind of a central tenet of the right was we don't like being told who we are allowed to mock, tease, or espouse opinions on at all. Since I've been here, we aren't the people. We aren't the party, the political movement of we're offended or it's offensive enough that you shouldn't say it.
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't put mocking Islam in that category out of the many potential sacred cows at all.
And Tucker basically just made a hate speech argument. He defined the mockery of Islam as the mockery of Christianity.
Yeah.
He tied those things together in a way I've never seen somebody tie them together, by the way, and say that is him mocking us for being Christians and we can't support that. He preceded that by saying, I voted for him before and I would probably vote for him again if he ran. What the hell are you talking about?
It would be like saying to mock Satanism is to mock Christianity.
Yeah, because
I will tell you this, the closest thing that we have to Satanism in practice is Islam. Just to be f***ing clear. Does that bother you? Just to be f***ing clear, the religion that says Jesus was not divine, the Jews and Christians are liars. And by the way, this new guy with the book who thought he was wrestling with a demon but was convinced it was an angel has a whole new list of rules that violate the old ones and you should follow them. By the way, if you don't, we're going to kill you. To mock Satanism is to mock Christianity. If you want to say, hey, I think this is too costly, fine. If you want to say President Trump hasn't been as good on right now the economy, okay, cool. But to say to mock Islam is to mock Christianity. No one should ever mock anyone's faith. I couldn't disagree more.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. And whatever it may be, at the end of the day, it's not really of that much importance. I don't believe, because I think all of this will cool down in the meantime, in the lead up to the midterms. It's just, we've seen it before. We've seen infighting with the conservatives in the Republican Party for as long as I can remember. And it's been one of the Achilles heels of the Republican Party, especially as of late. Just couldn't get along because people have different visions of, what's acceptable or what direction we want to go and everything else. Fortunately for those of us that are America First or MAGA or whatever you want to call it, we have been able to essentially take over the party with the help of Donald Trump and claim a majority of the conservative movement. That's the good news. The bad news is you're going to even have some of those players that helped us get to this point that have issues where they just go off the reservation. And people will say, this, that, and the other. And then other people are going to be making accusations about you this, about you that, And in a lot of cases, it goes both ways. So, for instance, because I criticize the actions of the Israeli government, I'll get called anti-Semitic or told I hate the Jews. Then on the other side of it, I'll criticize Tucker Carlson and I will be told by the other side that I love the Jews. I'm in support of the operation in Iran, and I think Donald Trump's doing the right thing. I will be told by some that I'm just a puppet of Israel because I'm supporting this Israeli-driven war. The only reason we're in Iran is because Israel told us to do so. So I'm going to get it. You're going to get it both ways. And in my opinion, if you're getting attacked by both sides, both extreme sides from each side of the political aisle, you're probably in the right spot at the end of the day. If you're being criticized by your party and the opposing party, you're probably doing something right, at least when you're a conservative. That's the way it seems. Anyway, press briefing is going to give us a lot of information today. We are waiting for that at any moment. Noto Roofing bringing you this part of the show. NOTOroofing.com, my roofing company. If you don't get that roof taken care of, man, it's just going to cost you more and more money, more than you ever want to pay. If you got a small issue, get it fixed now. If you got a big issue, get it fixed now. They'll help you file the insurance claim and everything else. As you know, when they come out there, they give you free roof inspection, complimentary roof tune-up, everything on the house. On the house, you get it like your roof's on the house, the inspection and roof tune-ups on the house. They got you. And if you got problems and you want to leave them, that's fine. You're not obligated to do anything. But Noto is going to take care of you on the front end, and if you want to proceed, they'll take care of you on the back end. 205-848-2299. That's 848-2299. Online, notoroofing.com. Chuck Davis, ChuckDavisLaw.com, ChuckDavisLaw.com. My personal attorney, if you find yourself in a situation where you need some representation, Chuck is your guy. He's my attorney. He's Richard Dixon's attorney as well when it comes to divorce, custody battles. I know a couple people in my life that are going through that now, and it's always ugly, man. Either one or both sides are going to be irrational, and you need a rational mind in the middle of that to be able to litigate it and get you the best possible outcome. That's where Chuck comes in. Same thing with probate, contracts, wills. Get those wills done, real estate, personal injury, car wreck, slip and fall, wrongful death, all of the things that come with that. You need compensation. You need the representation to get that compensation. Chuck Davis is where it's at. So reach out to my guy. Make sure you let him know I sent you and let Chuck take care of you. 205-848-2299. That's 205. No, that's Noto's number, isn't it? 205-823-2299. Is that? What's Chuck's number? Dadgummit. Did I forget already? ChuckDavisLaw.com. That's where the number's at. It's 205-823-9992. There we go. 205-823-9992. Online, ChuckDavisLaw.com. No representation is made to the legal services provided or superior to the legal services provided by other lawyers. So we are waiting for Caroline Levitt to brief reporters amid reports of the Strait of Hormuz closing. Now, let me explain how this has gone about. The Iranian regime announces the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, citing massive Israeli attacks inside Lebanon. And I'm looking at video that's allegedly from inside Lebanon that look like some pretty massive attacks in a busy metropolitan area. Some of the largest, these according to reports, some of the largest Israeli strikes in Lebanon in recent history have taken place just in the last 24 hours, which risk an end to the U.S.-Iranian ceasefire. There is a ceasefire that I guess is still seemingly in place. There's no attacks happening in Iran, but one of the big points was the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which has now been reversed because of the Israeli attacks in Lebanon, and that's kind of where we're at, and I expect us to get a lot of information. Now, remember, these are reports of the Strait of Hormuz being closed, and I'm assuming people that are tracking these ships and these tankers are seeing that actually happen, thus it's all adding up, but we will get direct information from the press secretary here in mere moments. I can go to the phone lines, but just be advised that I may have to cut you off if she hops up to the podium. So we'll keep an eye on that. Let me start with Daniel in Birmingham. Daniel, what's up?
What's going on, Andrew?
Hey, man.
So I don't know what Tucker Carlson's thinking or anything else. It's a very strategic reason as to why we're going out to the nuclear power plants. And notice President Trump didn't say anything about going after any of the fossil fuel power plants. It's the nuclear ones.
Daniel,
is uranium-235.
I'm with you. Let me put you on hold. I don't know how long you got. You can hang on, but I need to go to this press briefing so we can get the info. Caroline Levitt at the podium.
It marked the very first conviction under the Take It Down Act, landmark legislation that First Lady Melania Trump played an instrumental role in getting passed that protects victims from non-consensual AI-generated sexually explicit images, cyber stalking, and threats of violence. This is a huge achievement for the First Lady, and I know the President is very proud of his wife's efforts in getting this critical legislation passed to protect America's youth. So we thank the First Lady for her efforts, and we hope that others Reporters will report on this historic conviction yesterday. With respect to the 2-week ceasefire announced by President Trump last night, this is a victory for the United States of America that the president and our incredible military made happen. From the very beginning of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump stated this would be a 4 to 6 week military operation to dismantle the military threat posed by the radical Islamic Iranian regime. Thanks to the unbelievable capabilities of America's war fighters, the United States has achieved and exceeded those core military objectives in just 38 days. The U.S. military destroyed Iran's defense industrial base, crushing the regime's ability to manufacture weapons that they and their proxies use to maim and kill Americans and terrorize the world. Iran's ability to build and stockpile ballistic missiles and long-range drones has also been set back by years compared to where it was 6 weeks ago prior to the launch of Operation Epic Fury. We destroyed the vast majority of Iran's ballistic missiles, launcher vehicles, and long-range attack drones through more than 450 strikes on ballistic missiles and approximately 800 strikes on Iran's drone launching units and storage facilities. In total, more than 13,000 targets across Iran were struck. Again, this is in the matter of just 38 days. Meanwhile, the Iranian Navy was completely annihilated. The United States destroyed more than 150 naval vessels in total, including 16 entire classes of Iranian warships. Despite once being the largest undersea force in the Middle East, Iran now has 0 submarine vessels. 97% of Iran's once massive inventory of more than 5,000 naval mines has also been targeted and destroyed. Iran's air forces are functionally and operationally irrelevant at this point, after the United States maintained total air dominance over their country for weeks on end. To underscore the significance of this, before Operation Epic Fury, the Iranian Air Force would fly between 30 to 100 flights per day. Today, that number is 0. Iran's ability to fund and support its terrorist proxies has been greatly reduced. At this point, Iran can no longer distribute weapons to its proxies in the region. And most importantly, Iran will not be able to acquire nuclear weapons. Prior to the start of this successful operation, Iran was aggressively expanding its short-range ballistic missile arsenal. Through these weapons and its navy, Iran was attempting to build a military buildup around their country that would pose an imminent and existential threat to the United States military assets in the Middle East, our allies in the region, and ultimately the free world. Iran was pursuing this dangerous and aggressive strategy for one reason: to hold the entire world hostage to its terrorist ambitions. The Iranians aim to use their expanded military capabilities as a shield around their country to continue achieving their ultimate goal internally, building nuclear bombs. But their murderous and evil plans have been blown up, quite literally and figuratively, along with their military, their nuclear program, and most of their senior leadership, including the former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Their command and control structures were also massively disrupted after being struck more than 2,000 times. Many of their remaining leaders are paralyzed in fear and no longer enjoy the freedom to move around their country freely and meet openly. Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph. President Trump started Operation Epic Fury with strategic military objectives, and the United States has clearly achieved them. As we mark this progress, we also remember and honor the 13 American heroes who laid down their lives in this noble effort. I know President Trump and our grateful nation honors their ultimate sacrifice, and we will never forget them. May God bless their families. The valiant efforts of all of our incredible service members created maximum leverage for the President of the United States, allowing he and his leadership team to engage in tough negotiations over the past couple of weeks that have now now created an opening for a diplomatic solution and long-term peace in the Middle East. The president's maximum pressure and the leverage created by the success of Operation Epic Fury led to the Iranian regime asking for and ultimately agreeing to a ceasefire proposal with the United States. Iran could no longer tolerate being bombed or taking the gamble of what was to come following President Trump's 8 p.m. deadline last night. Iran has agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz, and as the president said, we have received a proposal from the Iranians that has been determined to be a workable basis on which to negotiate. I've seen a lot of inaccurate coverage today from the media about these negotiations and these plans already. So let me be clear and correct the record. The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false. With the president's deadline fast approaching and the United States military completely decimating Iran with each passing hour, the regime acknowledged reality to the negotiating team. They put forward a more reasonable and entirely different and condensed plan to the president and his team. President Trump and the team determined the new modified plan was a workable basis on which to negotiate and to align it with our own 15-point proposal. The president's red lines, namely the end of Iranian enrichment in Iran, have not changed. And the idea that President Trump would ever accept an Iranian wish list as a deal is completely absurd. The president will only make a deal that serves in the best interests of the United States of America, and he as a negotiating team will focus on this effort over the next 2 weeks, so long as the Strait of Hormuz remains open with no limitations or delays. These extraordinarily sensitive and complex negotiations will take place behind closed doors over the course of the next 2 weeks. I would strongly advise the media against running with narratives that have no basis in fact. What Iran says publicly or feeds to all of you in the press is much different than what they communicate to the United States, the president, and his team privately. Never underestimate President Trump's ability to successfully advance America's interests and broker peace. President Trump has a proven track record of achieving good deals on behalf of the United States and the American people, and he will only accept one that puts America first. With that, I will take your questions today. I'm sure you have a lot of them. In our new media seat, we have Shane Harris with the AMAC Newsline. Shane, thank you for being here. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Caroline. 2 questions for you. First, following the president's announcement of the ceasefire, if this is indeed the end of hostilities in Iran, what is the president's message to the American people about what was achieved for our country through Operation Epic Fury?
Sure. I think I just laid out a significant portion of that in my opening remarks. 6 weeks ago, the president looked the American people in the eye directly, and he told them that he launched this operation to take out the imminent threat that was posed by Iran. And that threat has now been greatly destroyed. Their Navy, their missiles, their defense industrial base, and their desire and their plan to build a nuclear bomb inside their country is no longer going to be allowed, can no longer happen, thanks to the remarkable success of Operation Epic Fury over the course of the last 38 days. That has been absolutely achieved, and now we're moving into the next phase of this, which is a negotiating period to put some fine points on this and to hopefully broker an agreement that can achieve long-term peace in the Middle East.
Yeah, and then second, what is the president's message to American seniors who have a much higher voter participation rate and they're likely to be a key swing vote in the midterm elections?
Well, the president loves our seniors across the country, and as you know, the president signed the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut last year, which greatly reduced taxes on Social Security for our seniors. In fact, thanks to the Working Families Tax Cut, nearly 90% of seniors will no longer pay tax on their Social Security. That's a huge win for our seniors and also for our middle class and working families across the country with the no tax on tips provision and the no tax on overtime. Next week is tax week. You'll hear a lot from the president about how his policies have benefited the American people, and I'm proud to report that the president will be traveling next week to the great states of Nevada and Arizona to tout this historic accomplishment over the course of the next week. Thank you for being here, Shane. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. Iranian state media is saying that Iran has now closed off the Strait of Hormuz today in response to Israeli attacks on Lebanon. What's the White House response to that? And you just listed many military successes. I understand that. But strategically, how is the administration arguing that Iran does not have more economic leverage than it did before the start of the war?
Sure. Well, with respect to the first reporting out of Iranian state media, the president was made aware of those reports before I came to the podium. That is completely unacceptable. And again, this is a case of what they're saying publicly is different privately. We have seen an uptick of traffic in the Strait today, and I will reiterate the president's expectation and demand that the Strait of Hormuz is reopened immediately, quickly, and safely. That is his expectation. It has been relayed to him privately that is what's taking place, and these reports publicly are false.
Caroline, the president yesterday threatened that a whole civilization would die if a ceasefire deal wasn't reached, understanding that Iranian leaders have previously said death to America. But why is it appropriate for the president of the United States to use that kind of language when talking about civilian targets? And was the president mocking Islam by signing off his True Social post over the weekend, praise be to Allah? Wouldn't that antagonize Muslim allies across the world?
Well, I understand the questions about the president's rhetoric, but what the president cares most about is results. And in fact, his very tough rhetoric and his tough negotiating style is what has led to the result that you are all witnessing today. Iran publicly acknowledging last night that they have agreed or that they wanted this ceasefire with the United States because they no longer could tolerate being bombed by our very powerful and lethal military, and that they have committed to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which the president will hold them accountable for, and it's something the administration is closely monitoring in real time.
So
Danny.
Should the world not take his word seriously?
The world should take his word very seriously in understanding that the president is always most interested in results. And it was the Iranians who backed down, not President Trump. He said that they would face very grave consequences, as you just laid out, by the 8 p.m. deadline if they did not agree to reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And what did they do last night? They agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Danny.
Thanks, Caroline. Would President Trump like to see Lebanon included in this peace deal? Because as you know, there have been increased Israeli strikes on Lebanon today with dozens of casualties there.
Sure. Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire. That has been relayed to all parties involved in the ceasefire. As you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu put out a statement last night in support of the ceasefire, in support of the United States' efforts, and he's also assured the president they'll continue to be a helpful partner throughout the course of the next 2 weeks.
Is there any thought, though, that the president might like to see Lebanon included at a future date, given that it seems to be causing or potentially undermining the Iran ceasefire?
Again, this will continue to be discussed, I am sure, between the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu, the United States and Israel, and all of the parties involved. But at this point in time, they're not included in the ceasefire deal. Jeff.
Thank you. Caroline, will the U.S. take part in talks with Iran in Islamabad on Friday?
I can announce that the president is dispatching his negotiating team, led by the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Witkoff, and Mr. Kushner to Islamabad for talks this weekend. The first round of those talks will take place on Saturday morning local time, and we know we look forward to those in-person meetings.
Now, what role does the president see for the U.S. in monitoring or helping with the Strait of Hormuz going forward?
I think the president commented on that this morning. We're going to continue to monitor it very, very closely. We will be helpful.
All right, so let me just hop in here for a second as they continue to ask questions because they want to point out a couple of very important things that she just brought up. One is she says, and that's why when I brought this up, when I saw it, I said reports are saying that the Strait of Hormuz is closed again because we didn't know. I was wanting to hear it from Caroline. She says the reports of the Strait of Hormuz being closed are false and that we are continuing to see an uptick in traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz. It is so detrimental to, and this was coming from Iranian media or whatever. I don't know where they were getting this information, but it is so detrimental to everybody's day-to-day life for fake news to start floating out there. And it's why the media is truly the enemy of the people. Because even the reports of Iran going back on the ceasefire after Israel bombs Lebanon and closing the Strait of Hormuz can shoot the price of a barrel of oil up dramatically in a matter of seconds, right? Because if that is the belief, then they're like, well, their price of oil's got to go back up after dropping below $100 a barrel. she says that in this ceasefire agreement, Lebanon is not included, which means Israel knew that when they made the decision to bomb Lebanon. And if they want to include Lebanon in the ceasefire, so be it. So technically, if that is the case, which I would believe it is, Israel did not breach or break any sort of ceasefire because Lebanon's not included. But everybody needs to cross their T's and dot their I's because, as stated, this is a very fragile ceasefire we're dealing with. Real quick, and I'll go back to Caroline here in a minute, but because Daniel was so patient and he waited through that, I'll go ahead and grab the rest of his call. Daniel, go ahead, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. So what we were talking about is the reason behind bombing nuclear power plants. Well, that reason is for uranium-235, and there is only, if I'm not mistaken, one active nuclear power plant in Iran. There's only one. Because the other one, I don't believe it ever got finished, but it's the one that's sitting outside of Brashear. Regardless, everything else that's over there dealing with nuclear are enrichment facilities. Those enrichment facilities, uranium-235 works perfectly fine in a nuclear power plant and can be enriched to highly enriched uranium at 20%, works perfectly fine in the one nuclear power plant that they have. You have no need to go above 20%. What they have been doing with the Nuclear Commission is denying access since the 80s and 90s, denying access to them, not allowing them to monitor it. Once you get to 80%, it is weapons-grade nuclear material.
Right.
And uranium-235, with all the enrichment facilities that they have the capability of having weapons-grade uranium. And if anyone doesn't believe it, they're foolish. What they don't have is the launch platform. If they had an intercontinental ballistic missile, they would have fired that thing a long time ago at us. Since the 80s, all they have chanted was death to America. We have tried every diplomatic way to reason with them. We've given them money. We tried to bring them up. And all they did was follow that money to all their proxy fighters to do nothing but terroristic attacks. They do not want to exist peacefully alongside anyone. So this thing from Tucker Carlson talking about, oh, my God, they're going to bomb and we're going to put one nuclear power plant. It erases any reason for them to have uranium whatsoever. That is a country heavily laden with fossil fuels. All of their other power plants are fossil fuel power plants. Take out the one power plant, no reason for uranium. We should have done this a long time ago. Tucker Carlson's an imbecile for what he said. I'm sorry, it's a joke. So that's all I have to say about it. People really need to brush up on their history, understand what's going on, understand where the hatred came from. It came from the 8 Years' War. They need to understand how all this began and what the real reason it is. I do think that President Trump said what he said as far as bombing a nuclear power plant, but what I think he meant was nuclear enrichment facilities. That's what he's going after because that's the threat. It's not the power plant itself. It's the actual enrichment facilities. Thank you. That's all I've got to say about it.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it. Yeah. And again, Trump is in these tweets are vague. He's vague for a reason. Like he literally keeps it vague because he needs the enemy to stay guessing. He doesn't want them to, he wants them to read or hear or see what is being said and then draw their own conclusions, but lead them to those conclusions and say, all right, whatever he does or whatever he says, he might actually do it. And by the way, for the first time in a long time, the media actually did something that they normally don't do, which is help Donald Trump by going on TV, going on all of their shows and talking about how crazy and unhinged Donald Trump is, which then reiterated to the Iranians that, holy crap, he's crazy. He might actually do this. And I think he would. So, anyway, apparently it worked. If I go back to yesterday and anybody that was freaking out about this yesterday is going to pretend like they never were, what were we talking about? About how everything's going to work out. Donald Trump knows what he's doing. He's not going to kill civilians. He's not going to start a nuclear war. But yet, You know, it's one of those things. And then the left's actually absolutely fascinating to watch these people. They went from Trump as a maniacal, evil maniac that's about to destroy the entire world to Donald Trump's a chicken. Literally. From morning to evening, from one night to the next morning. It's like two different Trumps. And that's the beauty of it for the left, is Trump can be whatever they want him to be at any time. He can be this thing in the morning, and then by that evening, he's something completely different. And nobody ever questions it. Nobody ever pushes back on these people and says, wait a minute, weren't you saying the exact opposite this morning? But of course, if you're a Democrat or you're a liberal, there is zero accountability for your words and for your actions, especially if you're in politics. That's just the way it works. Liberals get no accountability whatsoever. 205-545-9950. We'll hop back into the press conference when we get back. You're listening to The Line, Talk 99.5. 205-545-9950. You're hanging out with your boy Andrew and John Bird, as well as Ernest Financial. RetireWithErnest.com. RetireWithErnest.com. My buddy David Ernest, you know, he's been doing this over 45 years. He's been in the game for a while. And with all the uncertainty in the markets, you need some security. You need security for your retirement. This is money that you've been saving for your entire life, your entire adult life, and maybe you got 50 grand, maybe you got 500 grand. It doesn't really matter. If you've got at least 50 grand and you're, say, 50, 55 or older, you need to make sure your money's protected now more than ever, because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, and set up a plan for retirement. The beauty of this is, as I always say, it doesn't cost you anything. They get their fees elsewhere. They don't charge you, but they're able to put you in a spot where you don't have to stress over whether or not your retirement's going to be there. A lot of people talk about that. In particular, talk about Social Security. You always hear this, Social Security is not going to be there when you retire, which could very well be true, but you don't need to rely on anybody but yourself and the money that you've made, the money that you've saved, and to make sure it's there and make sure it's in place and make sure that it ends up being a lot more than you even expected. Also, on top of that, having a plan for retirement. Ernest Financial is where you get that done, man. I'm offering this for free. All you got to do is make that phone call. Let them know I sent you. 833-596-7233. That's 833-596-7233. And online, retirewithernest.com. Retirewithernest.com. Caroline, just wrapping up the press conference there, was very short. I'm surprised by that, which makes me wonder if some new news came in and they're going back to figure out what's next. She was asked a lot about NATO. She said NATO was tested and they failed, which is 100% true. We got one royal ship out of the whole deal, and it already went back to port because its fresh water systems wasn't working or something. And we did it on our own. Well, with the help of Israel. It's just, NATO can, got two words for them. A little. So, whatever. But the big news out of that press conference, as you know at this point, is the fact that the reports, according to the White House, the reports that the Strait of Hormuz is closed are unfounded, and that the traffic is showing an uptick, as there were concerns that the bombing in Lebanon from Israel would have breached the ceasefire agreement. But she says Lebanon is not involved in the ceasefire. If they're going after the Houthis or whatever, that's not part of the agreement. Whether it pisses off Iran or not should be irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. But Donald Trump has said, this is what we're going to do. If you don't sign a pledge and give us the uranium and open the strait, now you've got 2 weeks to solidify this agreement, and then Iran can go back to piecing everything together and deciding what they want to do with their government. The White House, Trump in particular, says that the people that are currently in place, and by the way, who knows if this supreme leader is even alive? We still, weeks later, still have no idea if the new guy even exists. He says these are less radicalized people that can possibly give a promising future to the people of Iran. These people are wanting to be liberated. They want new leadership. They want less of, being controlled with an iron fist from Islamic radicals. And they may get that. Hopefully they do. Hopefully for the people of Iran, they get back to what life once was so many decades ago. But also maybe they don't. What we care about in the immediate future is no nuclear weapons, no stranglehold on the world's oil supply, and quit screwing around and firing missiles at Israel, at the UAE, at any of these Middle Eastern countries, cut it out. Cut it out. Because whether we've got NATO or not, we have gotten a tremendous amount of help from other allies in the Middle East. And by the way, and they want that as much as anybody else. Because we had, remember, was it last week or was it Monday, John Bird? We had somebody who called in from the United Arab Emirates and said that what is it that you guys want to see as Americans? What do y'all want to see? And we essentially said
Monday.
It was a Monday.
It was.
We essentially said what we want is a quick resolution to this. And he's like, same here. He's like, we've had countless missiles fired in our direction. He said we're still living life. He was actually leaving dinner, I believe he said. But he said, we support what the U.S. is doing. I don't want to pin that on him, but he seemed to lean in that direction, as these other Middle Eastern countries do. The Saudis have come out and said, yes, we want the U.S. to finish this up and get out of there and, bring peace. That's what Trump's looking for. This idea that all of a sudden a switch is flipped and Donald Trump wants to kill civilians, I can't take those people seriously. Rick, what's up, Rick?
Hey, buddy, everybody's got to hate that Islam. Now, I don't know. There's so much information going around. I don't think people have time to sit down and digest it. It's just coming. There's too much information,
I agree with that.
Everybody's drinking Kool-Aid. Kind of like Jim Jones, There's so much propaganda and everything's twisted. And look at the press and look at the teachers and the indoctrination and all this stuff. Ain't nobody got time to sit down and discern what's right and what's wrong and sit down and be quiet and just listen and let God speak through them. You know what I'm saying?
Amen to that. Yeah, I think that's a good analogy because flipping through the internet or your social media feed is like a big glass of Jim Jones Kool-Aid these days because it's just too much for the average person to digest and be able to come out with the proper conclusion as to what's really going on, because everything's contradicting the next thing and everything else. And so it's very, and I think, and Rick, thank you for the call, buddy. Always good to hear from you. I think that's what makes our show and all these other shows so important is we can help digest this stuff for you.